Okay, so this is Finance Committee meeting of May 30, 2023, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. And this meeting is being held by Zoom. Members of the public have access to the meeting by Zoom, and we need to just remind everybody that the meeting is being recorded for both audio and visual purposes. And with that said, I'm going to call on each member of the committee to indicate that they can hear me and I can hear them. So I'll start with Anna.
Present.
Lynn.
Present.
Bob.
I'm present.
Matt.
Present.
Bernie.
Present.
Kathy.
Here.
And Alicia, we don't have any indication that she's present. So at this point, we will not count her as absent for the moment, and hope that she's able to join us. And but we have a quorum present, and we have one additional member of the council, but insufficient to constitute a quorum. But Jennifer's Haub is also with us in the call. Jennifer, I assume that you can hear. And
I can, thank you.
okay, so Lynn, if you notice a quorum of the council at any point, let us know. So with that said, I'm going to start by seeing if there's a member of the public who would like to make public comment, and remind anybody who wishes to make public comment. I see a hand up, so I'm going to have that person brought in as into the meeting, and just remind you that we ask the public comment be on any issue relating to the Finance Committee. It does not have to be something that's on the agenda tonight, but we want people always to have the opportunity to speak to the Finance Committee about any issue that's relevant to us. And with that said, Bertie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and say what district you live in, and then please offer us your comments and try and stay within 3 minutes, but please join us.
Thank you. My name is Bertie Newman. I'm calling in from District 3, and I'm commenting to urge you as members of the Finance Committee to guide the entire council to slow down, revisit, and revise the FY24 budget. Remembering back to the 2021 report by Seven Generations Movement Collective, BIPOC accounts of policing in Amherst described fear, dehumanization, distrust, lack of cultural competency in the APD, lack of diversity on the police force, and disrespect by police for communities of color. Still, the proposed FY24 budget continues to fully fund the Amherst Police Department, even while Crest cannot operate 24/7. Thus, folks who are not safe or comfortable with police are left to wait until the morning to seek help if they experience a conflict or concern outside of Crest's hours of operation. That's not the racial justice I want to see in Amherst. I think that it's time for a budget that moves money out of policing and into initiatives like Crest, DEI, a youth empowerment center, a BIPOC cultural center, a resident oversight board, and anti-racist trainings. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I do need to observe, and just for the sake of anybody who's present at the meeting in any form, that we are, as a Finance Committee, limited to responding within 30 days of providing the budget. So we are required to make a recommendation and submit it to the council by tomorrow. So the Finance Committee is under a time requirement that is built into the charter. And so we are, that is the task of today. And I mention it because while we don't normally respond to public comment, it is really relevant to what our task is today. Just prior to the meeting, I've been having a conversation with Sean that I wanted to make public to the committee and make public generally. And that is that we have an order that we're being asked to consider. It was part apparently of the original presentation for borrowing authorization for one of the enterprise funds, for a capital expenditure of one of the enterprise funds. And if we are going to make a recommendation on that today, I think we need a little bit more explanation than we had previously. And someone asked Sean to please explain what the order is and where it fits into the process, because it's not in our report. And I think that we're being put in an awkward position now if we don't get this rectified and added to the report, that we will be needing to make a recommendation on an order that's not reflected within the report we've drafted for the council and are going to be discussing in a minute. So Sean?
Yeah, so I think this is somewhat of a symptom of our process was a little bit different this year, where we didn't do department head presentations, partly for the sake of time, where department heads could give a little bit of an overview of their department and what was coming up. We sort of went straight to FAQs, but yeah, from the beginning, in the budget presentation, we proposed that there were going to be 2 debt authorizations, one for the pumper truck and one for pump station number 4, which is a project within the sewer fund. It is in the budget to an extent. It's not really in the sewer section because there's no cost implications for FY24. The repayment wouldn't start until later on, but it's in the upcoming objective section of the sewer fund. You'll see to complete the replacement of Southeast pump station number 4. It is in the back of our budget where we list all the actions and all the appropriation requests. It's listed there, and it was not explained very well, but it was listed in this executive summary saying under council actions on page 11, which said that we would be asking for 2 debt authorizations. So all that being said, and the last thing I'll say is in the financial summaries that the committee reviewed as part of the enterprise funds, those 5-year summaries where we looked at the inflows of revenue and the outflows of expenses, it's been factored in there. In the sewer fund, there was a projected debt repayment. It's part of that projected debt repayment column. I can't remember if we explicitly discussed it when we went through the enterprise funds, or probably would have been when we went through the water and sewer rates. I'd have to go back and look, but or listen, but it's been part of the plan from the beginning. I won't do as good a job as Guilford when it comes to explaining why, but essentially we have a pump station that's part of our wastewater system that is not operational, and we've had to sort of begin preliminary plans because it's somewhat urgent to replace it and repair it, and this would be the remaining cost to completely replace the pump station number 4. And if the committee feels like it needs additional info, I could try to get something from Guilford prior to the vote from the council, or whatever you guys ultimately decide you want to do. It is somewhat urgent, so I don't want to delay it too much. But if it had to be postponed, I could get something from Guilford quickly.
So I guess let me first see if there are any questions now from members of the committee. Seeing a Lynn, I saw your hand wave before.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't get to it fast enough. When I do remember this discussion, I'm trying to find a document where it's described. And I wondered, Sean, whether you can find that, or if in fact we have a financial order for it.
You've had there's a financial order for it in the packet. And it was
Okay.
in the packet back on May 1st as well. So it's been part of the,
Okay,
but there's no memo accompanying it because haven't typically
Okay.
done memos as part of the budget process, but there's an order for it and it's in the packet tonight.
thank you.
Yeah, and I just, as indicated, but it was looking over the orders this afternoon that all of a sudden said, wait a minute, I don't remember this one. And that's what started this conversation. Kathy, let me turn to you.
I'm just gonna, I think it's sort of building on Lynn's comment. I'm basically fine with this, but we've made we've made at least one recommendation for the format of the budget book, that in the future we figure out a way, Sean, to show fringe benefits in a table, not necessarily down to the finest piece. A couple times in the Joint Capital Planning Committee, it's come up, the capital plan should include the enterprise funds as an explicit section of it. And if it did have that, we would have had the pump station in there for debt authorization.
Mhm.
And, you know, I looked across the Northampton one, it gets very long if you do that, but it's basically putting something in if it's specific to the enterprise funds. And then, Lynn, we would have had it as a section of the capital improvement program. And we could decide whether we wanted to formally have a discussion at JCPC about it, but at least it should be, when I think of a capital plan, it should be all capital, not just general fund capital. So it would be a way of capturing for people that the Centennial Plant, we had to do a special one year, the first year, I think, that suddenly, oh, we forgot the plant, and it was $11 million then. But so it's a request to think forward on this. So we don't find it gets barely mentioned. On page 11, it's sort of mentioned, but it's not mentioned in the way Lynn just said. And then you could also avoid a separate memo, because there would have to be a section in the capital plan that was a paragraph on this. So I am fine with it because it's come up a few times, but it would be hard to find the written document around this. So that's a looking forward suggestion. I see Bob was shaking up and down head. You know, I like things packaged in ways that's logical for me, regardless of how it was done before the council happened.
Sure.
You know, whatever the history was of why we've done it this way, I just think it's cleaner. Thanks. Sorry, my hand is down.
Yeah, Lynn.
I have found the financial order in the May 1st documents. If people would like, I can bring it up and show it to people.
I mean, it's there, and it's also in the packet for today's meeting. I think, I mean, you can, while we're talking, maybe it is worth bringing it up now, because maybe we should just go ahead and then consider whether to vote on it while it's on the screen, because we don't have to do all of the votes in the same order. The question that I have is whether there's any objection to doing a slight amendment to the section on this particular enterprise fund, to point out that there's one capital expenditure that involves borrowing from this enterprise fund and is reflected in an order that is being presented to the council, just so that there's something, even if it's just a sentence or two in the report, that acknowledges that it exists and ties the two together. And if I could get a hold of Amy or Seki tomorrow or Guilford, and either of them with a few sentences of explanation that they would propose that makes sense, I could add that too. So that would be my suggestion of how to handle this. And so let's see what Bob had. Bob, your hands up.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that in the report under the sewer fund, at the end of the first sentence, we could add a clause to the effect that, the rates are going up partly due to, the request for debt or the debt request for pump station number 4, and then you get an explanation from Guilford or Amy as to why it's important to replace this thing, just a one sentence. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I think that the other thing that I was hoping to do is also tie into pointing out the order, so that when the
Okay,
council is looking at the orders, the 4 orders, that there's reference to the order in the report.
Okay.
That would be the additional piece, because I think that there's enough knowledge about the pumper, but this one is taking the group by surprise. So that would be the other addition that I would make. And also, if I understood Sean correctly, this will not affect this is not a factor in the rates we're approving for FY24. This is a future, because the borrowing wouldn't be repaid during the year.
That's correct.
So it's actually a future rate question, not a rate for the year that we're approving. Kathy?
So just following up on that comment, I think that sentence needs to be in there too. I like what Bob said, is put it in that there is a debt service authorization, then you can cross-reference it. And this will not affect FY24, but it will starting in FY25. I originally put my hand up because as I'm reading this, unless I'm missing it, it never says the sewer enterprise fund. So this is all, and I don't know what our normal, this just reads like regular capital, but the sewer enterprise funds revenues for that would be paying for this debt. So do we not need to somewhere say that this debt is, Sean, I don't know how they normally, what did Centennial say?
Are you
that
talking about in the report itself?
No, I'm saying that the order that I'm looking at does not use the word enterprise fund anywhere, sewer enterprise fund. It just appropriates debt service. So do we not need somewhere to say this is the service for this will be repaid by the sewer enterprise fund? So I'm just looking for a way that this isn't being paid out of
Somewhere else, yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, so we list it specifically under the sewer fund in our our appropriation table at the end, but let me just double check. One
Yeah, I mean,
thing.
I think the question is actually a good one. I appreciate you raising it, Kat, because if in like the Centennial borrowing, there's reference in the order to the Centennial Fund, and that's a common practice for borrowing related to enterprise funds, then the question is whether there's a problem with the order not being sufficiently clear, and whether the order might be revised before it's actually on the council agenda.
Yeah, so if it makes anyone feel better, we have had Sonia review all the orders this year. That's one of our lingering responsibilities, is to still review them all. But let me just pull up the Centennial so you can see how that one was done. So this one is a little more I'll share my screen real quick. I don't believe they typically have the actual fund, but this is how Centennial looked. So this one's a little bit more robust because it has the clean water revolving fund in it. Is that too small? Can you see, everybody see that?
You can see it.
So I believe pretty much we copy and pasted the same language to prepare the order this year, except for this part here because it doesn't apply.
No, so it certainly doesn't there either. So I missed it. I missed it that time around too. You know, I understand what we're doing. I just think it's maybe we need to figure out whether we should generally do that so that people understand where the debt service and
I want to.
principal can be paid. I don't need to change it right now if this is the way it's been approved, but that's what my question is because it's treated differently in the way we pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
we can look at that. I know in the past, there's been a point of contention with Sonia because there's lots of wordsmithing we can do to orders, and sometimes it does more harm than good to tweak them all the time. We have a format that's been generally workable, and we haven't had any issues with DOR. So I think the piece that we're doing right now, which is important, is talking about it and this being memorialized in the report to say that this is an order from the solid waste or the sewer fund, and that it's, the plan is for it to be repaid by rates. I think that's the important piece, is that it's covered in this report, because we do have to show that it was discussed at the finance committee.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. And I just then maybe take another look at it for
future. Yeah.
But if we keep having millions of dollars for these two enterprise funds, take a look at whether we ever need to reference where they are. So Bernie, I'm sorry, your hand is up. Yeah.
Bernie?
Yeah, it's a matter of bookkeeping. The bond holder or the bond issuer isn't going to care where the money comes from because it's an obligation of the town. So, for our internal purposes, we've identified a funding stream for this. But I don't think it's necessary to have it in the order, and it certainly wouldn't be necessary for the bondholder to own that. Matter of fact, the bond owner might be a little bit anxious if we pinpoint a specific fund, which could run dry.
Right.
This basically says the town of Amherst is going to pay you back $400,000.
Great.
If we say we're going to pay you back $400,000 only if we have it in the water or the sewer excise fund, that could be troublesome. That might actually cause a premium in the rate. So my 2 cents.
Yeah. I note that the other order that we're going to be approving this evening does specifically mention the fire department pumper truck in the order, so that there is a differentiation. But I think that the point Bernie's making is unrelated. Paul?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize what Bernie said. These are general obligation bonds that we don't tell them where the funds are coming from. The bond agency is rating the town, not our funding source. So we can pull the money from wherever we want, and we can say how we're going to pay for it. But we're saying that out loud to the council now, and I think we could put that in writing, certainly, which I think we've done. But I think if we start to put in language that says we're going to fund it this way, the credit agent, the bond agency, bonding authorities might have problems with that.
Now that helps a lot. That makes it so as long as we've written these verbal sentences clearly in writing, I think it makes it clear to everyone where we think it's coming from.
So with that said, I think we have an agreement that we will do an amendment to the report to the enterprise fund section, just to make it clear somewhere in the report that ties this together, and that we can get back to other business. But I'm going to go ahead and make one of the 4 motions that I had written out on the motion sheet right now, because we just talked about it. I move that the Finance Committee recommend that the council approve appropriation and transfer order FY24-05A an order appropriating funds for a portion of the Town of Amherst capital program equipment, buildings, and facilities.
Second.
So
Second.
Anna seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'm going to call for a vote.
Andy, can you just confirm the number you read? The order number?
FY 2405A.
The
Um,
pumper is 09.
Or the debts,
The,
the debt,
the debt authorization for the pump station is 09.
09A.
Yeah.
Were you looking to do the pump station, Andy?
Oh, wait a minute.
Maybe
Yes,
put it back up on the screen, so we are all looking at it.
I'm
Yeah,
about
that's
to do that.
Thanks.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so apologize for the error, but so I'm going to amend the motion to read. I move that the Finance Committee recommend that the council approve appropriation and borrowing authorization order FY 2409A, an order approving and authorizing borrowing to fund capital projects. Anna, do you agree to the amendment of the motion?
I absolutely do.
Okay, so having said that, then let's go ahead and proceed to vote on that, and then
Paul
No.
has his hand up. Oh, no, he doesn't. He just didn't take it down. Okay.
okay. So with that said, I'll just go in alphabetical order. Anna,
Aye.
Lynn,
Aye.
Bob,
Support.
Matt,
Support.
Bernie,
Support.
Kathy.
Yes,
I'm a yes, and Alicia is absent.
Yes, she will not be here tonight.
So the vote is 4-0 for the voting members, with one voting member absent and 3 resident members in support. So that takes care of that. Now, where we are, should get back to the agenda in general. And I think that we need to talk about specific pieces of the budget, and basically, what we want to do is make sure that if there are any questions that remain about the budget, or any sections that we need to specifically discuss, that we do so. And I'm going to raise one to begin with, and then after that, see if there are others. And I don't think, unless somebody makes a motion, it doesn't need to be dealt with as a motion. But having said that, unless there's a specific motion, the town manager has made a recommendation to us regarding funding for elementary schools. And we know that the school committee has made a request for additional funds. It was referenced by the manager in his budget, and very specifically stated that he's did not recommend the additional amount. As we've talked about, there's a couple things to note. One is that when it was explained to us by the chair of the school committee that the funds that were requested were calculated on the basis of taking the amount of money that was the difference between 0.5% or 2.5% and 3% increase, and taking that difference and applying that entire 0.5% increase to all of the operating budgets solely to schools and then dividing proportionately between regional and elementary schools, and that's how that number was calculated. And therefore varying from the practice that has been longstanding practice in, that we've had of allocating interest any increases to operating budgets on a proportionate basis across the board. So that said, it has two effects. If it was to be voted, one is that it's not consistent with that policy that I just described. And secondly, it is not tied to any specific expense or any specific position, which the school committee also identified. So those would be the reasons that I would put forward that I personally would not make a suggestion of changing the town manager's recommendation. I did not include that in the report section that I wrote because I was one who did the schools, but would add that if there's agreement of the committee. But I wanted to make sure that today we had the discussion and provided an opportunity for somebody to make pursue a different position or even offer a motion. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and let my colleagues speak. So nobody is asking to speak. Unless somebody says something now, I'm going to assume that there's agreement that I can make that amendment to say. Kathy.
Yeah, Andy, you explained this last week or last Friday, but if you're looking for what we should do with this, I wasn't sure quite what you're suggesting, but in the report, it talks about the 84,000. So are you saying in that section report, we considered this and decided we would not recommend it? Is that what you're looking for? To separate it from the financial orders? Because you have a 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of list here. And were you thinking you would, I'm in support of that. Let me say that, but I wasn't looking, I'm trying to ask you what it is you're asking of us. Thank you.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that it seems that it needs a statement of policy in why we're not recommending a change, because it was very specifically requested by the school committee.
But that's what I was saying. Would it be in this elementary school section write-up?
Yes.
Is that where you would put it? Okay.
That's
So
where I would put it. I would put it right where you said, and I would probably boil it down to a couple sentences, because I don't think that I think it's adequately explained otherwise in that section. Matt?
Right. So this might be similar to what Kathy's asking. The rationale you just gave that the 0.5 should be spread across all departments, that doesn't currently live in the report. Is that accurate?
No.
Oh, it is.
Not explicitly, because it really is it's explicit in the sense that when you look at the town manager's budget, that the percentage increases for each operating budget is the same percentage. And we haven't questioned the consequence of that.
Well,
and that has certainly been in council guidelines consistently.
right. So, I mean, there's a sentence that says, just before the first table, budget adjustments table, the 2 paragraphs up from that table, it says this amount was not based upon a request for a specific additional expense. It was determined by suggesting that the additional 0.5% of operating budget increases be allocated solely to education and allocated proportionally. That's I think that is from my reading it, which is pretty cursory. That's the most on the nose. You might be a little bit more specific on that if you wanted to. If the guidance was to spread it across departments, that might be the place. But I think it's adequate as is, to be totally honest with you. But since you brought it up and you brought up that rationale, I just point out to that sentence.
Yeah, no, that is where I would put it. As I said, I probably would not add more than 2 sentences.
Okay.
But if there's agreement, unless there's, I will draft something and send it out, noting very clearly where the change is before, and give you an opportunity to comment before I send it to the council. I think that as long as I get it to the council sometime tomorrow, it can be very late tomorrow. And I intend it to be late tomorrow so that you have the opportunity, if you have comments on any changes, this or other changes that we discuss, that there's a little bit of time left. So, Lynn?
I made note of both the need to add something in that paragraph. I'm keeping the, if you will, the record on draft 3. And I also made note about the previous financial order or borrowing order that we just voted on. So they're both there for you, Andy, when you get to that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So is there anything additional any sections of the report that people wish to raise? Matt?
And I apologize, I may have missed this as well, but I believe in this meeting we talked about the potential for free cash once that's certified, but I don't know if that going towards the school's budget to make up whatever shortfall, but this report may not be the place for that.
I think just maybe adding to what Matt said, I think the conversation was when we go to certify free cash, like we did this past year, looking at our revenues, and if appropriate, the town manager might recommend something. I'm not sure it'll end that, or I'm not sure the same way it'll play out the same way this past year with the governor's budget or the final budget coming in so much higher, but I know we had that discussion about evaluating that again in the fall.
So I guess, Matt, that since you've raised the question, then should we include somewhere in the report, either in this section or more generally, that if additional funds become available because there's a significant addition to free cash when free cash is certified, that we would suggest that the manager consider a supplemental budget providing additional funds to operating budgets as done the prior year.
The only tweak I would recommend is the supplemental budget this past year wasn't because of free cash, it was because operating revenues actually came in higher because state aid came in higher. We were following our policies, we were lining up a recurring revenue with a recurring expense. So just slightly different than using free cash.
So it didn't happen at the time after we knew what the free cash was likely to be?
We did it, I think we did it that same time because there were a number of financial orders. There were some appropriations from free cash for one-time capital expenses. But it wasn't, I think it was just because we try to bundle that stuff together for the council.
Well, free cash usually increases only because you either underspend by having not been able to spend all of the, in this case, FY23 expenditures, or an additional revenue.
But again, the extra 0.5% we allocated in the fall was because the state revenues from what we built the budget on came in much higher, because the final state budget doubled unrestricted general government aid, which was kind of a surprise.
Yeah, I think that at this point we probably know, since the Senate budget is a known commodity, we know what our maximum is at this point. Bernie?
I would be reluctant to make promises that Paul might not be able to keep. And mention the fact that there's, I think you're always open at any point in time. I think you're open to having to amend the budget if something occurs, but I wouldn't want to start another bidding war for, if we get free cash, we must do this. For one, I think we need to wait and see what happens. I'm very anxious about this next year. I think there's going to be a recession. I think we're going to see that we don't know what exactly is happening with a number of federal programs now because of the so-called agreement. I would just be very reluctant to open that door. We have a good management team, and stuff gets monitored very carefully. And if there appears to be bumps in the road, I think we can trust our staff to recommend to the council that changes be made.
Kathy?
I was going to say basically the same thing. I'd stay silent on this. I mean, although Sean, you said you and Paul have come up with something creative for our EMT firefighter line item. There's a lot of demand if we miraculously have extra money to spend in the fall. And I'd be leery of doing this. The only comment I would make is that extra 0.5 basically just came to us. We never came back together. That came from you all. So if there had been any thought of something more on the education line, that might have been the time to do it. Whether everything was 4.8 and something was 5.1, but so it's a better time to do it when we do the indicators. If there's a reason going into a year that again, I want to say whatever we've done in the past, I wouldn't say just because we've done it in the past, we should always do it that way. So if there's a good reason to depart from that, we should be looking at that carefully in October, November, when we're looking forward. So I'm putting my hand down. I am agreeing with Bernie on not opening up what we might do in the fall should something positive happen. I'm hoping our ARPA money is totally protected, by the way. So.
Yeah, for what it's worth, we have received word that was not part of, that's not part of the, it's not at risk as part of the current deal that's being worked on, which is good news. Not that it may not be a risk in future deals, so it's something we still need to be mindful of, but.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Lynn?
And I'm just going to say, I agree with Bernie and Kathy's position on this.
So, Matt, are you okay with the way that this is concluding?
Oh yeah, I mean, as I said at the outset, I don't know this document is where the point is. I just recall our discussion and thought it was worth asking. Yeah, I'm fine.
And I think I raised it initially, so I'm moving away from what I said, Matt. That was, in fact, you were remembering completely correctly.
Okay.
I remember too well.
Other issues that people want to raise. Matt, your hand is still up.
No, it's a new one.
Okay, go with it then.
Yeah, and Andy, I'd asked you, you were the one who shared the information with me. But this is a question for Sean. When we heard the public health update, we had not had the news yet about the health director resigning. And so I wanted to ask that question of you first, if there's any budget, obviously, obviously it's a budget slot that will be held. And I'll talk slowly so Lynn can scroll down to that section, but I wanted to ask if there was anything within this document that should reflect those challenges of Jennifer, resigning, or I don't know. I'll just kind of open it to you and just bring our attention to it, because it would feel a little tone deaf to write it as written now with that news.
Yeah, I don't know if anything needs to be added to this document. I will say it's never a good time to have a transition, but it is a time where the health department has some additional staffing in terms of they've had some ARPA funds allocated to maintain sort of administrative support position and to bring the public health nurse up to full time. So I think, in terms of your larger question about the transition, I think the budget and the resources there are sufficient to handle the transition. I'm not sure it needs to be mentioned in this document unless there's something, to your point, that's written in a way that maybe we should reconsider it because she wasn't able to attend. But no direct budget implications in FY24. There'll be some staff turnover, costs or savings depending on who fills that position, but no major impacts on the FY24 budget.
Right.
We didn't
A related
speculate-
question, actually. I'm sorry, Andy, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, we didn't speculate about the financial implications of other changeovers in staffing, like police chief.
Right.
We certainly did know about it.
Yeah, and as of May 23rd, she was in fact, the public health director. So it's not inaccurate. So
And she still is until Paul may have
July.
the exact date, July. Yeah.
But since we're on the section, and this is, I promise, the last piece I'll ask about this, I could not tell, and maybe you don't want to tease it out any further, but if you look at the very last sentence there, it says, from reviewing the website, these appear to be infectious and either. Is that known, the either or, is that known now, or is it okay as written?
This is related to the additional staffing within the department.
Yeah, you had mentioned that some of the staffing, I think you said two, I feel a little awkward talking about positions at quite this point.
Yeah. I think I do. So so we could be more broad in the way the positions are described. I think these aren't necessarily wrong. One of the positions, or one of the part-time positions that we were funding with ARPA was sort of a case manager, related to COVID, and that position is actually starting to wind down. The other position is the administrative assistant position, and then part of the public health nurse. So I think you could say, just say the administrative. You could lose the public health program assistant, or pick one or the other. I think they're both accurate.
I think you just delete that sentence. I'm not sure
Yeah,
what it
that's
tells
what
you.
I would do. Yeah.
Okay.
It reads really well without that sentence. Done.
Yeah, Kathy, your hand was up separately, so.
Yeah, mine is, I'm gonna, if anyone else has anything substantive, mine is just a structure issue, and it's a labeling. So I'll just wait. And there's one typo, but I can send you, there's probably more than one typo, but I saw one typo, which is pretty, and one other flashed by me, and I'll send those later. So I'm gonna just wait and see if anyone has anything else substantive.
Andy, I'm just going to go to the one place that talks about inspectors. And I hope I'm here.
Yeah, of course. From your prior comment, there was a modification, just so you're aware.
Okay, the number of inspections has increased. Okay, got it. I'm fine. Totally fine.
Yeah, no, I just want to acknowledge that I had invited people, members of the committee, to send any suggestions to me, but not do it to all. And then I had to combine, and I had two different members point out a problem that Lynn was just referencing, because she was one of the two. And so I just was, because two people were pointing the problem, I just came up with a solution. Base, and yes, we are. Anything else? Otherwise, I'm going to go back to Kathy since she had something.
I've read it plenty times now.
Kathy?
Okay, if you go all the way up to the top, Lynn, I like a reader's guide to structure. So you've got a section that I would call process. Then you have a section called recommendation. Then you have a very, very, very long section called budget sections. I would label them with a capital letter A, B, and C, or Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3, because it you know, and maybe you can just say, you know, we summarize these in 3 sections. It's purely a yeah, it's what Lynn's doing, you know. So there's 3 sections because they're different enough. Yeah, that's it. That's all. You know, and you can figure out exactly how those lay out, but it's, you know, what we want, what the council will focus on is section 2. And hopefully they'll just, yeah, that's it. I tend to write things, longer reports with executive summaries, and have the action be as soon as possible in it. And Andy, you've done that where our recommendations will be by page 2. And then it will go on for quite a number of pages.
Yeah, actually, that gets into an interesting question as to whether you think that the recommendation about the school, even though it's a negative, it's not doing something, but would you include that there?
I could, you know, since we're about to have to vote on orders that get preceded by words, and said I could putting a sentence there. We also considered the request by the school committee for an extra $84,000 and are not recommending it, and just plunk that sentence in and say, see, you know, page whatever of the education, but not make it a big deal of it in the recommendations, just a quick reference to it. So people don't have to plow their way through the education section to find that. It would just be, I would do order, you know, with however we're going to do it. And I said, we also considered the request by the school committee for adding 84,000 to the elementary school and are not recommending that. And I would just end it there. Since technically we're not even allowed to do it under the charter. But I wouldn't get into we're never supposed to increase anything.
We are allowed to,
Oh, we can increase? Yeah, okay.
the schools.
The school,
Yeah.
for schools, okay.
Yeah,
Forget I said that. I'm just suggesting a really quick way to reference that in the recommendation as the very last, a single sentence. So I'm done.
yeah, and no, I think that the references that the charter says, except as provided by Mass General Law, and Mass General Law provides that
Right.
the council, on the request of the school committee and with 2/3 vote, can increase. And then there's some other language that follows about the limits of that, because you have to make budget balance.
I forgot and I misspoke. So yes.
Yeah.
And
So that's just so everybody on the committee is understanding that. That's why I wanted to make sure I said it, but I don't want it in the report because I don't think it needs to be there. Is there anything else regarding the report draft as we had it that hasn't already been discussed? I assume that everybody had an opportunity to read the paragraphs that were added for capital improvement program. And there was nothing there because that's the only new thing since draft 2.
Okay,
And everybody knows what it says about the additional recommendation about roads that is incorporated in that section, which was brought up in our last meeting. Those actually implementing a statement made at our last meeting. So with that said, not sure that we're not ready to just go on to the other 3 orders and get to a conclusion.
I just want to make sure I share
Make
this.
this meeting really quick in there because there's one other thing I just wanted to let you know, but maybe I'll just tell you right now. We have for Monday's council meeting, which is not the budget meeting. The budget meeting will be later in June, but there are 2 things that are on the agenda for Monday. One is the water and sewer rates, and the other is the optional tax exemptions. So I started a separate committee report just covering those 3 items, which I anticipate is going to be no more than a couple pages, and it's more analogous to how we're handling prior our usual reports. This one's a very unusual report. So I just wanted to let you know that I was working today on a additional financial report to go in the packet that just covers those 3 issues and references the fact that they are on the agenda for Monday. So having said that, we're back to needing to go with our orders, and because we're recommending the plan as presented. And so with that said, the motion would be I move that the Finance Committee recommend that the council approve appropriation and transfer order 24-04A, in order appropriating the town of Amherst operating budget for fiscal year 2024.
Second.
So that motion has been made and seconded by Lynn. And there's no further discussion, and I always look for hands before I call on it. I know that Anna is going to have to leave the meeting at 6:30, and she may have left.
I'm still here.
You're still here? And
I'm still here.
I'll call on your
Aye.
vote. Lynn,
Aye. Thank you.
Lynn, you voted?
Aye.
Bob?
Support.
Matt?
Support.
Bernie?
Support.
Kathy?
yes,
And I'm a yes, and Alicia is absent, so it's 4 members voting yes, 1 absent of the voting members, and the 3 resident members in support. And so then the next motion, and if there are any questions about it, is you can ask them now, because we're getting into the two that have to do with the capital improvement program. One is a general one, and one is a borrowing. So I move that the Finance Committee recommend that the council approve appropriation and transfer order 2405A, an order appropriating funds for the portion of the town of Amherst capital program equipment, buildings, and facilities.
Second,
So the motion has been made and seconded. And again, I'll look to see if hands go up for any additional discussion or questions regarding the order. Seeing none. I'm just going to go down the list again. Get votes. You see no hands up. Anna,
Aye.
Lynn,
aye.
Bob,
Support.
Matt,
Support.
Bernie,
Support.
Kathy,
Yes,
and I'm a yes, and Alicia is absent. So again, it's 4 members members voting aye, 1 voting member absent, and 3 resident members in support. And the last order is this motion. I move that the Finance Committee recommend that the council approve appropriation and borrowing authorization order FY 2406A, in order approving and authorizing borrowing to fund the purchase of a new fire department pumper truck.
Second, Devlin Gothier.
So we have a motion that's been made and seconded. Is there any questions or comments about discussion about this motion? I'll give it a moment to see if there are any hands, and if not, I'm going to go back and call for a vote. Seeing nobody has raised their hand. Anna,
Aye.
Lynn,
Aye.
Bob,
Support.
Matt,
Support.
Bernie,
Support.
Kathy,
yes,
and I'm a yes, and Alicia's absent. So again, the vote is 4 voting members voting yes, 1 voting member absent, and 3 resident members in support. So that takes care of the orders that we have on the agenda. And I don't think that we have any other business. Did already announce that I'm working on an unrelated committee report, so that you wouldn't be surprised by that. And we don't have any minutes for this time, and I don't think I have anything else. Is there anybody else who has anything else that they'd like to raise that's unanticipated? Bernie?
Just very quickly, I'd like to offer thanks to Paul, to Sean, and the whole crew for wading through and creating a pretty interesting document, a very detailed document, and managing a very difficult situation. So even though we at times we get testy, we do appreciate the work and recognize the difficulty that has to be overcome to produce this product. So thank you, gentlemen, and please thank the staff.
Kathy?
Well, we'll do that, but also thanks to the Finance Committee, you guys really go about this in a very diligent way. You create a very big document in terms of your report, which I think gives comfort to the other members of the town council to know that you've done your due diligence. And you always ask really good questions. I mean, you know your stuff, and we appreciate it. And the fact that you've been doing it for a number of years helps us do our job better. And Sean really deserves, I mean, he really carried this weight.
No,
does.
thank you. Yeah, thanks. And again, we appreciate the feedback as well. Every year we get feedback and we try to do things to make it a little bit better. All the suggestions are good, you know, from the benefits to the capital improvement program and ways we can make that better. So keep the feedback coming. We'll keep trying to make things as best we can.
I have a concluding comment, Mama, but Kathy?
I want to echo what was just said, but I also want to thank you, Andy. You pulled together a lot of information, and I know a whole bunch of people wrote sections, and it's pretty invisible if the style that we all submitted varied a lot. You've managed to smooth it over. That doesn't look like we had an 8-member authored where everyone writes differently. And so I know some other people, I didn't this time, I'm proofreading, but thank you for it. And I do think, you know, that somehow we should capture, Sean, when you said things improve, we should maybe at a future finance committee just capture some things that go by in passing, like next year, you know, I still would like an index to the budget book, to tell you the truth, in the beginning, so I can find the police page. I've figured out how to thumb through it, and online I can type the word, but if I'm carrying the book around, but just a set of things that are on the document so that we don't need to talk about revisiting them. Doesn't mean you need to do them all, just that we have a record. It would be, and I think that's up to us just to generate we talked about the following things to be considered in the future. We do a little bit of that in JCPC, you know, but this would be great. So another year, another $1 million. Is that where we are?
We're gonna take that print. We're gonna get that printed book out of your hands, Kathy.
No more. No, you know, it's really helpful if you're, yes, it is, if you're trying to put stickies in to go read something, but yes, you're right. I can read online. I'm good at it. Thanks.
So I want to thank everybody here too. Thank members of the committee and everybody, just you know, all of you who are here just really plugged in and did your part and wrote a section, and it would have been impossible for any one person, no matter how much time you have, to write as much, and it really did work. It was something that was a community effort, and I think we should all take pride in. And you know, so I want to thank everybody, and I want to thank Matt. For Matt, I is the one person I asked to do a little bit more on the section, and he did it very quickly and promptly, and didn't even at least audibly grimace that I could see. So I appreciated everybody just you know, doing the making this all possible, because as I was putting it together in its final form, I really thought that we had come up with a very good process, which gets into one other comment that I have, and that is that when we think about this, I would seriously recommend to the committee that's going to be reviewing the charter next year that it look at that 30-day requirement. I think that it's really unreasonable expectation to try and do this in 30 days. It put a tremendous amount of pressure on this committee, and you know, I appreciate how we all banded together and rose to the occasion, but you know, it was harder for us in the first years, and as there's turnover, which there eventually will be on the committee, and there's learning curve for people, I think it's something that ought to be re-examined, is to how that time is divvied up. So that's the only additional comment that I have about the process, which isn't anything we can do, but we can ask that the committee that's going to be reviewing the charter next year give some thought to it. So is there anything else that anybody has that they want to raise? Lynn?
When are we meeting next?
Good question, and glad you raised it, and I have to see if I can find my
I know we're not meeting on Friday at 2.
we are not meeting on Friday. We originally had planned it, but I canceled it a while ago, and I hope that everybody got the message that there is no meeting this Friday. That it is Scott Livingstone's not his last day, but the time that we're going to take some time to get together and thank him. I know that all the counselors know about it. Paul, if you feel like resident members should know about the 2 events, please take the opportunity. I would like to think that they're essential parts of our community.
I'll make sure they know by email.
And the dates that we talked about, I think, and there's one other item that we do need to talk about, but I'm not sure that I want to do it in a meeting where Alicia is not present, but we do need to get back to this question of when it is that we are meeting, because we had set up these twice a week things, but Matt had raised a fair question about not meeting on at 5:30 again, or excuse me, yeah.
I think it's important to go back to 3. I mean, it's asked a lot of people to be eating through their dinner period.
Well, I think that if we did it, Alicia's statement to us that we were operating on is that she's not available Monday through Thursday until 5:30, and that she's available on Friday at generally during the day, so that if we're going to do daytime meetings, so the logical resolution to this, if 5:30 is not a good time and we want to make this our last 5:30 meeting, is to, at least for the time being, go towards Friday meetings. And so if we did that, I think I'm going to need to get the calendar up, because we will need to schedule another meeting. Would be the June 12th or June 19th, I believe would be the.
So not next Tuesday, I should take off my calendar, the 6th.
I think that's correct.
Okay.
So it's June 9th or June 16 or June 23. And you only have, you have the following council meetings. You have June 5th, June 12th, and June 26th. And the issue of the salary of counselors has to come before the council no later than June 26th.
And we also have a CPA recommendation that should be very quick, but we were trying to get it acted on before the end of June.
Do we have to do a public forum for that one?
I think it's unclear, so we decided to just do it to be safe.
Okay.
It's a request not for a specific project, but just to establish a reserve for FY24.
All right, I'm meeting with Sina tomorrow about our agendas.
I have a preference for June 9th, but Andy, if we don't have to decide right now, I can just put a soft hold on the 9th and the 16th, is what I think Lynn is telling us.
Those would be the two.
I cannot do the 23rd, so it has to, I absolutely can't.
And
So
both the 9th and the 16th are inconvenient to me and for me. And
I'd prefer staying with.
we're going to change schedules, and the reason for changing the schedule should be present at the meeting. So the sooner I hear about that, the more I can make arrangements from my own personal schedule. And if I had a forced choice of those 2 dates, I think the 9th would be preferable.
Can Athena send out a doodle like previously? For me, I really talking through this is it's tricky, I
Yeah,
think.
that would be good for me too. And what Bernie is raising is, do we really have to switch off of Tuesdays to Friday? So just a poll that put the 13th in, which would be that week, or the whatever. But I'd rather not do this right now. I'm just
Okay.
telling you, if it's later than the 16th, I can't do it. So
All right, so I will talk with Athena tomorrow about polling. And also, I believe Alicia might be available tomorrow to find out when she's available.
So why don't we leave it at that, and we'll get either Lynn or I can get back to you, or Athena. One of the- So with that said, I don't think we have any other business today.
Good.
And
thanks.
seeing none, then we've done a good job. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks
And,
for all the
Thanks,
hard work.
adjourned.
Andy,
Thank
thank you very much. You steered this process really nicely. You get
Yeah.
you did a lot
Well
of
done.
credit, a lot of time.
It's always a
Thank you.
pleasure to work with you, Andy.
Well, thank you. We're
Bye,
adjourned.
Well.